welcome to this week's episode of MOAR Tech. I'm your host, Michael Amargon, and this week we don't have Vicky. And no, this does not mean that, she's being replaced, like what some people thought was the case come last episode on Esports Wrap, where we had a new host called Dwan. New co-host called Dwan. People were asking, is she replacing Vicky? No, Vicky's still here. She's still our co-host for MOAR Tech. She's just out this week doing some events with her sisters, and she'll be back more than likely next week. But until then, don't worry, you still have me. Now, when I say that, we have some topics this week. Before we get into those, I want to address a few things. Last week, for episode 40 of MOAR Tech, we cut short, and we were talking about the Samsung Galaxy at Note 9. And during that episode, the power shut off, and so our show shut off. Now, I'm going to be taking a look into getting a battery backup for in cases like that. So, at least we can quickly wrap up the show and, it doesn't end up like that. But to end off on that topic last week, we were pretty much finished with talking about the Galaxy Note 9, but we didn't really talk about the fact that it has an exclusive agreement with Epic Games. More specifically, their game called Fortnite. Thank you for the host, Nally. That said, now, what they've done is a little special. And I say that in a few different ways. I say that because they have had it so that the Fortnite for Android was exclusive to them for a few days. Pretty much persons who have from the Galaxy S7, I think it was, go up to the Galaxy Note 9, which no one should technically have unless they're testing stuff or press or something like that, then you could get access to Fortnite on Android. And I think that's still currently going on, at least for right now. I could be wrong. But essentially, you get a bunch of items inside that as well. Some skins, jetpacks, stuff like that. Cosmetic stuff. Nothing that actually helps you win the game. But I will admit some of these skins do look nice. Especially the cosmic one. Like, it makes you look like you are just wrapped up in stars. Like you're some celestial being or something like that. It looks nice. It will probably draw more attention to you in-game because of how it looks, which will probably end up killing you, but at least you'll die in style. That said, I do want to point out, that there is some issues that's happening with, Fortnite, and especially when it comes to Androids. See, they're doing it in a very special way. They're pretty much bypassing Google's Play Store, which is the recommended method of downloading applications when it comes to Google's Android operating system, which most of the world has just by sheer numbers. That's in comparison to iPhones, where the only way you're actually getting on an iPhone is either if you have jailbroken your iPhone and you sideload it, or if you go through their version of the Play Store, which is the App Store. And that's what they've done. And so they're splitting like roughly 30, I think it's a little bit more than 30%, but 30% of their profits with Apple. So for the first 20 days that Fortnite was out for iOS, for example, they made roughly around $15 million just on iOS alone. Crazy, right? Yeah, at least I think so. Now, so that means that out of that 15 million, Apple gets about 5, and Epic Games gets about 10. It's not quite exactly those figures. This is why I say it's not quite 30%. and it's more like 33 something percent, but semantics. Now, what they're doing, what Epic Games is doing with Google is, since Google's Android is a open operating system in a sense, it means you don't necessarily need their app store. It's preferred by far, but you don't need it, which is the reason why you have places like F-Droid, which is completely third party, and you could add your apps to that and download from there. Or you could go the Amazon route, like what they did with their Fire phones and stuff like that, and just go through the Amazon Underground App Store and download like that, which is perfectly fine by all logical reasons and purposes. Now, the issue comes, really and truly, it's not that, you know, you're bypassing the security is the real key factor here. Like, sure, you're not sharing your money with Google because, you know, that's an option that they give. It's not a recommended option, but it's an option. Now, the security is the key thing, like I'm saying, because already the people know that this game is now coming out for Android. So what are they doing? They're making these fake versions of the APK. APK is pretty much a file that allows you to, it's pretty much the app itself. So you install that, and then it installs the app for you. It's pretty much the container for the app that you can download. So essentially what you're doing, they are making these modified versions of the Fortnite app that are malicious. Like they have malware inside of them to get your keys, or like download stuff, or like get access to your phone, this, that, and the next. And they can do this strictly and really and truly solely because of the fact that, you know, you have given them access to do so. By downloading these things, you would have to accept the loss of permissions in a sense that, hey, I'm downloading this third-party app. I understand the risk that it takes, and that's it. Like, instead of just saying, okay, well, I'm gonna let Google search for viruses and malware and all that kind of stuff, which they do a fairly good job of. They're not perfect, but they do a fairly good job. So yeah, there's that whole issue. Like, someone somewhere should have said, you know what, guys, let's not host the file on our website to download the app, because, you know, people are going to go searching for this, and then they're more than likely going to just download some random thing. Hey there, Nally. They're more than likely going to just download some random app instead of, you know, the one that's actually on our website. The best thing to do, like I've been saying, put it in a recognized app store. Amazon is for one. Google Play Store. Actually, Amazon's probably your best bet, because they don't really do a revenue share like that. You could quite literally throw up your app inside there and they don't really care. You could like use some alternative method of payment, and that way you still have a method for people to go in and download your app. But what if I don't have Amazon? Well, I mean, most people do, for starters. At least most of your players do, I would assume, or at least their parents do. And if they're kids, then do you really want them buying a bunch of stuff? Or you could just take the 30 split share like you've been doing with Apple already and just like man up and take it. Like, you're already doing it with Apple. Just because you can. That you're essentially you're pulling the same kind of mentality that you're arguing with Sony about. Hey, Sony's pretty much saying, hey, I can lock you guys out from playing with other people. And Fortnite is like, hey, I can, you know, not let you guys have 30% of the market of my fees to make sure that, you know, everything's secure. So it's a matter of mentality. It's a matter of, how should I put it? Being greedy, which is essentially the same thing as Sony anyway. So right now, Fortnite, to my eyes, you're pulling a Sony, and that's not a good look. That said, I did want to talk about something else that's happening in the world. Something else by the name, it's still related to Android, but it's you may have heard some names go about a while back, called Android One. And before well, the true topic is Android Go, which I think the title should already state. But the thing is, to understand what Android Go is, you have to understand what Android One is, and how they correlate with Android on a whole. So it's a little funny, and let me explain. Most of us in the world... Oh, you're getting a lag. That's not good. I don't know where that music came from. Sorry, 1 second. Yeah, I know. Okay, I found it. Okay, so... And by the way, if you are lagging on this, I do have other streams that you can go on. I have it on Mixer. I have it on YouTube. You can find both of those, mixer.com/morecookies and youtube.com/morecookies. If, it makes it a little bit easier for you to watch and it's not being laggy. Now, getting back into this, most of us are running on Android. And for the most part, Android's worked well for us for a while. It's just, here's the issue, the true and honest issue. Not everyone works well with Android, and for a lot of people, the sad fact of the matter is Android is not affordable for everybody. And that's something that Google's really trying to push forward towards. They're trying to reach towards the next 1 billion people. And to do that, they need to make Android more affordable. And that means, having these phones out there that don't have as much hardware inside them, or the specs aren't as high, I should say. So you have phones, it's today's day and age, where, they're pushing like 6 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs, 512. Like, those are the high ends. The mid range, they're more like 16, 32, 64 kind of range. The 64 is more on the high range, mid-high range. But the point is, this hardware costs a lot to, especially developing countries. Like, these people do not have like more than $100 to really spend on a phone, if that. And so that's what they're really trying to gear towards. And so they developed Android One, I think it was back in 2014, which was meant to be a means for people to get the more affordable phones, because what they did is they said, hey, manufacturers, don't make these phones more than this spec. Like, don't make it more than this much RAM, this much hard drive. Let's cut things down. Let's try to sand things down, give them a lightweight option, and go with that. And apparently, the manufacturers fought back hard. It was not popular, so it seems. And if I can find a quote for it, actually, anyway, okay, I can't find that quote. But essentially what it is, the manufacturers fought back. They wanted control of what all kind of phones they made. And there was some issues. But Android One is still doing fairly well in places like India. But then people started to bump up the numbers, and Google kind of had to say, okay. And so they became more the mid-range operating system for phones in some places around the world. And so there's a certain amount of hardware that's they're allowed, and things are made to be lightweight for them to run smoothly. Then comes 3 years later something called Android Go, which is actually meant to stay with the low-end devices, the phones that are like under $100. And you'd think, okay, well, maybe this is going to replace the Android One initiative, and it's actually not doing that. It's actually becoming its own thing. So you technically have three versions of Android. Again, you have Android, Android One, and Android Go. And what they're saying is, for the Go devices, these are the ones that cost $100 or less. There have been several initiatives, and this is a quote right now, by Google to make Android smartphones accessible to billions of people who have limited resources. Arpit Medha, the product manager for Android Go, revealed that Android Go is the company's latest attempt to make Android smartphones accessible for all. One of the questions that was asked to him is if it was a replacement, and his answer was that Android Go is not a replacement for Android One in its current form, but rather Android One is focused on the mid-range market, while Android Go is on the entry level. And then when you asked Google CEO Sundar Pichai, his response was similar. He pretty much said that he doesn't see Android Go as a replacement for Android One, rather the two products that coexist with an overall Android ecosystem. And while it's easy to consider that, Android Go is a natural replacement, it seems that Google has other ideas, at least. So essentially, we have three versions again, and it's currently on Android Oreo. So you have Android Oreo 1, Android Oreo Go. So Go's are currently already a thing. It's just not many people know about these because, well, not many people on this side of the world really check for the less developed countries. They're only checking the United States, the EU, and a few other places. So you're probably going to find more and more places nowadays talking about the Android Go phones, because that's the latest initiative for the more affordable devices. And the reason why that's happening is because, well, there aren't a lot of smartphones that are $100 or less nowadays. So the only phones you're really going to get for that are the phones that are barely creeping by because they're running Android, the regular version that isn't streamlined, or I have no other better word to call it, but the dumb phones of the world. So okay, so Joseph, that's a good question. Joseph's asking, is that the different platforms doesn't mean that there are new rules for coding in Android Go? And the answer to that is no. It's still Android. It's still basing itself off of Java, and everything like that. So you don't have to learn any new form of coding to be able to run your apps on that. You just need to make sure that they don't be resource intensive if you want them to hit all those three versions of Android. So, for example, what Google has done, they've actually streamlined some versions of their apps as well. I'm trying to find, I had a list of the different apps that they have. And I am failing myself right now. Okay, so I'm on their blog right now. They have Google Go, which offers the ability to read websites aloud and highlights each word so you can follow along. So that's the lightweight version of Google Search. You have YouTube Go, which makes it easier to enjoy videos while using less data, with new features like gallery mode for downloaded content. So you download it over Wi-Fi and then watch it on the go. So you use less data. You have Maps Go, which now features navigation, making it possible for people with Go Edition devices or unstable connections to use turn-by-turn directions, whether you're traveling by car, bus, or on foot. The only issue that I've been finding though is that some people are actually saying that the GPS on the Maps Go isn't all that great. Sometimes it's a little off by a little bit, and so it can be a little weird. I just want you to keep that in mind. Then there's Files Go, which is actually a pretty neat app, and like you could download this on the you could download all these ones that I'm talking about and the ones I'm going to be talking about shortly onto your regular Android device right here and now and test them out, which is great for developers to see how like the differences are and try to streamline their apps to make sure that they work on everything. But yeah, Files Go is really nice way to clean up your Android system across the board, as well as transferring files. This thing can quite literally transfer files up to 490 megabits per second. That's roughly half a gigabit per second. Like, that's insanely fast, putting it mildly. And it has saved people roughly around 90 terabytes. So that's nine. Wow. That's 90,000 gigabytes. Then you have Assistant Go, which is much like Google Assistant, which supports additional languages like Spanish, Brazilian, Portuguese, Indonesian, and expanded support for device actions like controlling Bluetooth, camera, flashlight, and added reminders. And of course, Android Messages, which is the text messaging version of the app. There's Android Messages Go Edition, which is now 50% smaller in size, and the phone app also includes caller ID and spam detection. So those are really, really neat when you think about it. And overall, I think this system is going to do fairly well when it comes to market. It's just making sure that I think what they need to make sure of. Oh, right, there's some other versions as well. There's the Gmail Go, which is of course Gmail lightweight. There's Gboard Go, which is the keyboard, which is a little bit more lightweight. There's Chrome. I think there's a version of it that's lightweight as well. So yeah, across the board, they're making these lightweight versions to keep everything running streamlined. And there's one interesting thing that they're doing with their data. They're pretty much making it so that you can, everything's pretty much going through a data saver using the Google stuff. So it's saving you data even when you're using data because it's compressing it. And so when you compress it, it makes the things that you're trying to get smaller in size. So let's say you're trying to download a video or watch a video, for example. This is not the best example. I don't think they actually do this, but this is just an example. You watch a video that's 5 megs, it's going to try to compress the file as much as possible, make it maybe 3 megs instead. And of course, you know, Android Go is saying that apps open up to 15% faster because of how lightweight everything is. So a lot of things are coming into play with this, and it's not just something that's not really thought out. There will almost always be issues. So there's that, but I mean, there's currently issues with Android and iOS on a whole, so you can't really fault them for it too much. And then they are also adding in some extra little features that are nice. So for example, for those persons who really are in places that have a really strict data usage limit, the focus again is on data, but when you actually go to check your data usage, it'll give you something that pretty much says, you know, okay, well, we are monitoring your data usage. Like you can monitor it, I should say, and it has something inside there that allows you to top up your usage as well. So essentially what they do, I'm trying to find an example of it, but it's a data management tool that, using the quick settings, shows you how much data you have left, and then it actually has a button right there, right next to the actual data usage, that says top up. And so then you can actually top up with your carrier. This of course is going to be carrier specific, but I would assume that, you know, if a carrier is going to roll out with this device, they should work that in. So that'll be interesting to see, because I know a lot of carriers, sometimes they only really have something like a USSD code or something like that. So maybe it ties into that. And you press the button and it pops it up and you apply for data or something like that. I'm not entirely sure. But once I actually get my hands on one, I'll let you guys know. By the way, that reminds me. The overall space that Android takes can vary. So for example, Android 9 on a 8 gig phone will take up about, well, you'll have about 2.5 gigs of storage available to you after installation. With Android Go, with the Oreo version, will have 5 gigs instead of 2.5. So you're doubling the amount of space you have because of how lightweight Google has made that version of Android. And then you've got the Go version, which we're going to talk about the Pi version of it now. So Pi Go. That's an interesting name. The Pi Go edition will essentially take it down even further, giving you 5.5 gigs of space. So you won't really run into the issues that you would have had before, because typically when you get down to 5.5 gigs and then you have to install things like Facebook and WhatsApp and a few other things, that pretty much runs through all of your remaining space. And so since there's hardly any hard drive space, your phone then starts to get really, really slow. And so when you have more space to work from and download stuff and actually have some extra space on the side, that means that your operating system can run a little bit better, a little smoother. And then you couple that with the fact that, hey, you know, this is something that's lightweight, it's going to run even better than that. And then you make something that's even more lightweight, that has more space, and you're just getting that extra on that. So it's a really nice idea what they're going from with it. And I do have to admit, I like the fact that they're doing this. I am surprised that there aren't as many devices as well-known devices out there. Currently, there are about 120 plus countries that supposedly support it. So they say, because they said, quote, "We welcomed our first wave of Android Go Edition phones in April, and now there are more than 200 devices available in 120 plus countries, including India, South Africa, the US, Nigeria, and Brazil. We'll also continue to refine the core operating system and have added a variety of new useful features, so on and so forth. And it comes with a HD or regular VGA screen, 4 gigs or 8 gigs or 16 gigs of storage, or 3G or and 3G or 4G support. And the Go Edition device is for everyone. In some countries, devices are available for as little as $30 USD. So that's in American money, which is holy crap. With more than 100 manufacturers planned to release the devices before the end of the year, you can expect even more options when choosing your first Go Edition device. On this list that they actually have here, which is just a few companies, there's the Nokia N1, there's the Lavia Z50, there's the itel Smart 2, the Mobicel Astro, the Symphony V96, the Cherry Mobile Omega Lite 4, that is a mouthful, by the way, the Advan S50, the Blackview A20, which I will admit, at first sight, I thought that's a BlackBerry. I'm a little sad at that. The Micromax Bahat Go, the Doogie, wow, someone actually named it the Doogie, X50, and the Starlight Star Plus. Exactly, that's what she said, Mally. So I have another question. Oh, okay. No. Apparently I didn't have another question. But yeah, I know there are more phones coming out that's even not on the list that they've given out. I know this for a fact. I can't say how I know this, but I know this. Um, and I can't say which manufacturers. You'll just have to hear about them a little later on this year. Um, that being said, that being said, I do want to like just quickly go over some other stuff. And of course, if you guys have questions about this kind of stuff, you know, feel free to shoot a message on in the Discord chat or on Twitter using the hashtag MOAR Tech, one word. You know, I'll pick up on those, I'll answer them, and you know, we can have a discussion about it if you want. So the best question I think before we move on from this topic though is, who are these phones really good for? And you know, when you got people rolling up with the Note 9s and the Google Pixel 2 XLs and the Huawei Mates and like all these other kind of phones, like it's hard to say like I want something other than those. But you know, you do have to always look inside what's in your budget. You can't always go for the $1,000 phone. That's just not realistic. That's not, I shouldn't say it's not realistic, but it's not something that's financially responsible. I'm not gonna lecture you about your financial responsibility. But what I am going to say is these phones are good for those that are on a budget. And like I said, these phones are $100 or less. One of them is quite literally $30. These will run better than say a blue phone that's currently out that's like running on 8 or 16 gigs and like 1 gig of RAM or less, and you're expecting the world out of that thing. And yes, I have a little bit of bias against blue. There you go. You're still in it. Apparently, Amusable Door pooped their pants today and gave up, and they're still in it. That's not the kind of thing that you should be in, but you do you. But I can't believe I said that. Right, so you know, Go is not for the mid-range, it's not a high-range phone. Android, high-end to mid-end. Mid-end is Android 1. And Android Go is for the low end. So, you know, base yourself on what you can do. You can always like save up for the other stuff later and get whatever it is. If you need a phone, quick and fast and in a hurry, and you only have a little bit, Android Go is what you need. But let's move on from Android Go. I've been talking about that for like the past 20 minutes now. And I want to talk about Apple and iOS. iOS 12 specifically. So here's the thing. They've been pulling stuff a little bit. And I want to start off with Android 12 Beta 7. Funny Nally. Yes, I realized I was talking for a while on Android Go, but it's an important topic. I do believe it's important. But Apple has actually taken with the Android. Well, sorry, wow, okay. Apple has taken iOS Beta 7 and launched it. Then people said, oops, we're not seeing Google time, like group time inside this anymore. I keep like referencing back to Google and Android. We're not seeing group time anymore, which is pretty much their version of FaceTime with up to 32 people at the exact same time. And who in the world are you going to have a conversation with 32 other people? Like, what? Really? Come on. Like, that's a little bit above and beyond. Like, leave that stuff to other places. But we've got, you know, we've got Apple saying that they're going to pull it, essentially. and it's not going to be in an iOS 12, at least when it launches, which is pulling a very similar move to what Google did with Android 9, which is also called Pi, where in their well-being app, which we mentioned, I think, in a previous episode, actually the last episode, their well-being app was touted as being a key functionality inside Android 9. Pretty much, for your health and like your eyesight and like mental health and going to sleep and not burning out and that kind of stuff. And then Android 9 came out. Well, all the betas were there and people were like, hey, I don't see it. I didn't see it, personally speaking. And I wondered about that. I looked all around. I thought I was going crazy. But lo and behold, like, I didn't see anything to like say like where you go to enable it or anything like that. And so I thought, okay, well, maybe Google scratched that, maybe? And then, or maybe it's coming in a later beta. And then they rolled it out and made it go live, and it still wasn't there. And then a little bit later, after that, they then said, hey, if you want to be a part of the well-being beta, click here and fill out this form. And I'm like, but this was supposed to be rolled out at the exact same time that this thing was supposed to be coming out for everybody, so what's going on here? And unfortunately, Google didn't like hold up on that bargain, which now Apple's doing. They're not rolling out the beta test for it like they were supposed to, but they're saying that it's going to be rolled out after iOS 12 launches, at least so they're saying. How long after? We're not sure, but they rolled out iOS beta 7 and it wasn't in it. And then they found bugs in that. Well, people found bugs in that, so they pulled it. And now there's iOS beta 8 that's out, so people can beta test on that, which it's still not in. So yeah, it's definitely looking like your group time stuff is not going to be inside there until well after iOS 12 rolls out to the mass populace. So have fun with that. Yeah. Now, before I call, because that was actually my topics for today, like that was supposed to be it. But before I cut everything off, there was a question that was asked by someone who's currently in chat last week. Nally, you asked me a question. How much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? And, this has been a question that's been haunting me my entire life since childhood, I think that's the case for everyone, right? Everyone. This is something that happens to everyone, right? So I looked into it. I did. And I found a true answer. So one study says that a woodchuck doesn't necessarily chuck wood. It doesn't eat wood. It chews up wood. So we can kind of go with that. And if it was physically able to chuck wood, like actually like it wouldn't chuck it very far because it's actually a very small bird. So sorry, not a bird. How should I put this? They don't really. It's more commonly known as a groundhog. So I don't really know why I called it a bird. It's a tiny rodent. Very similar to a beaver, just a little smaller than that. It's about 14 pounds in weight, 32 inches long. And considering their size, they can eat a whole lot though. They can actually eat a 100-foot redwood tree in about 35 seconds. Joking. I got you there. But like I said earlier, so you shouldn't have fallen for that because I said it. They don't eat wood. They eat grasses, clovers, black cherries, honeysuckles, snails, insects, baby bird, eggs. Well, baby birds, eggs, and other stuff that they can get their mouths on. I had you like I had you there, Nally. That was the point. Yes, the song is a lie. The song about woodchucks is a lie. But like I said, if they tried to throw wood, it wouldn't get very far. And if they mashed it up, essentially, so we'll say that chucking is mashing up wood. So chewing on it. They could pretty much go through about 700 pounds worth of wood. So, yeah. They pretty much, what they did is they measured the inside of the typical woodchuck burrow and found that, if it was filled with wood instead of dirt, it would have chucked about 700 pounds worth of wood. Another study pretty much said that, they can pretty much get through about 361 point, and I'm rounding here, 92 cubic centimeters of wood per day. The actual amount is 361.9237001. But they say that's not the most reliable research right there. And if you want to really break that down, that becomes like 22 cubic inches, or like 0.36 liters. So I am not going to say that amusable door. And now he's saying I can chuck wood at about 7 pounds of wood. That's why I get a really. Anyway, guys, so I want to just quickly point out, if you guys do have questions that relate to tech or you want to have a conversation, again, feel free to come inside the Discord. You just check on our website, morecookies.com, where there you can actually watch previous episodes or listen to the podcast versions of them. You can go to our sites on Twitch or Mixer or Facebook. Check that out, those out as well. The links to the Discord is on Twitch and Mixer, though, as well as the website. And, I will be back next week for Esports Wrap on Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And MOAR Tech will be back next week's Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as well. And until then, this is Michael Amargan. Take care.